Well, here we are on the floor of MJBiz Con, the 10th annual. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. So happy to be joined by Nick Richards. He's the head of the cannabis division of Greenspoon Marder, which is one of the largest cannabis practices in the United States of America. Nick, thank you so much for joining us. Great to see you, and I understand this is not your first rodeo of MJBiz Con, is it?
It's not my first one. Yeah, I was at the very first one. I think it was there in Denver, and you know, there was a bunch of people that I knew from the fledgling industry at that time. I think it was about 80, 90 people strong at that event. And look where we are now, Jimmy. I mean, it's huge, right? I mean, it's if the people on could see it, it goes a mile that way and a mile that way, right? It's a real reflection of the growth of the cannabis industry generally. This event is a big event in the Las Vegas world, not as big as some. But it's so exciting to be here and to see all the professionals here and to see the industry show up and to see so much excitement and buzz around the idea of legalizing cannabis. It's awesome.
It is amazing how far it's come in the 10 years and gosh, even in the last few years. And now, you know, you had the pandemic in the middle of it now, and it's evolved as an essential product for medicinal marijuana policies and laws that are out there. 36 states, you got 18 or 19 legal, depending on how you feel about South Dakota. I know how I feel, I call it 19. But Nick, there's still so many issues having to do with cannabis. And I know here at the conference, you're gonna be talking about the challenges of the IRS and 280E. And when we talked last, you actually brought up another clause, another item that that affects the industry as far as being a cash-only industry as far as the IRS goes. Is this going to be the subject of pretty much what you're going to talk about in that panel?
Yeah, I mean, there's a moderator, right? So we're gonna answer questions. Kat Daly and I. You know, Greenspoon Marder has been a champion of that fight to establish sort of fairness around taxes in the cannabis world. Right now, the cannabis industry is really horse shackled by a code section called 280E that takes away all of its deductions. From those of you who don't know it out there, when you go into that local dispensary, that bud tender that you're talking to, that person's salary, that company can't deduct it. That rent for the facility where they're selling the marijuana, they can't deduct that either. And so it's a really, really, really tough business. It's a leftover code provision on the war of drugs, which we all know was a war against minorities and a war against difference in this world. And I say again and again, it is the remnants of that war, and it's something we need to get rid of.
And yet the Supreme Court has pretty much said we're not going to do that, although you've got the Judge Clarence Thomas, you always precede his name, the conservative judge, Clarence Thomas, saying that the federal laws are contradictory. Something has to be done. Lord knows they're trying, but in this political climate, I'm not very confident that they're going to be able to get anything done. Maybe they'll be able to get the banking done. One small step in cannabis is always a big step towards normalization, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's true. And, you know, we see a lot of normalization kind of on the street and in our communities and, you know, in our cultural circles and all that kind of stuff, but it hasn't permeated up to the brick and mortar world as much, and we still see a big disconnect between what we're seeing as sort of official case rulings and government positions on cannabis and what's really true about cannabis, right? And that's been everyone probably on this hearing this now knows that's been a fight of cannabis all along. It's been saddled with these falsities, and we're still fighting that. And a lot of people are still grounded in that, frankly.
And yet, you look at a show like this with 1,100 vendors. You know what's going on in the merger and acquisition world. The big are eating up the little, or the medium anyway, and the little are still surviving. But this industry does have an obligation, I believe, in giving those who have been most impacted by the failed war on drugs, an opportunity. Are we going to see that?
Wow.
I know that's a loaded question. And by the way, I'm going to put in a plug for Curaleaf, because they do now have a initiative to help social equity applicants out. And that is what I want to see more of the industry do.
And we have that at Greenspoon Marder as well. We have a number of social equity client candidates that we are representing, and we reduce our fees down to represent them. And we want to work with that industry to help them come along. It's a tough question though, Jimmy. Like in Colorado, for example, there was no social equity when the program was rolled out, and then social equity became a big part of the industry, and Colorado didn't want to be left behind on that, so we created a new license, the delivery license, that is available for social equity candidates only. And so states are looking for different ways to find ways to address the problems from the war on drugs and provide equity to folks that have not received equal treatment in the past. But it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing. If I'm a business owner and I've put my blood and sweat and tears into my business, and along comes the government and says I have to give some part of what I think is mine to someone else, that's a conversation at least, right?
And conversation is so important in times like this, especially with issues like this. This is one of the reasons why I love what I'm doing, because I'm not afraid to have these conversations with people who are making the policies and creating the laws, interpreting the laws, because I do think we all have an obligation to do right now by these people.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think it's the fun thing to do anyway, right? I mean, the one of the great things about the cannabis industry is it's just full of so many good people and so many good sort of mission statements, right? Everybody wants to kind of solve the problems of the world, and I don't know if we're going to be able to do that, Jimmy, but it sure is nice to be a part of the effort.
Right, and I think that's what we have to kind of glom onto a little bit, right? Is to be, hey, we're part of history here. Whatever little part we can do to impact this is what kind of drives us every day. It's what drives me. I don't know, but I think it drives you too.
It does. It does. I rode in a taxi on the way over with a big influencer out of California, and he and I were talking about this whole thing and where's the industry going, and I think he's talking right now actually on his panel, and I think we're coming together. I think his panel is sort of can the cannabis culture and big business survive in the same sandbox, right? Yeah. And I think the answer to that is yes. Look around, Jimmy. Look around. Big business is here already, right? Look at the money on the floor, right? With those economic incentives and those possibilities comes big business and collaboration with folks that aren't so big business savvy, perhaps. And there's a lot to learn on both sides there. There's a lot that big business needs to learn about cannabis, and there's a lot that cannabis needs to learn about business. And I've seen problems on both sides. You see these big business guys walk in like they know the whole world, and they're going to change everything, and they're going to be growing this weed that grows like a weed, and they're blah, 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 blah. Right. And then 2 years later, they've failed completely, right? It's not easy.
What in life is easy, Nick?
Talking to you, Jimmy. Talking to you all day long.
That's Nick Richards from Greenspoon Marder. We're going to have more from Green Rush Live and from MJBiz Con. Don't go away.